Hey guys, I was able to try the preview version of Vessel of Hatred, so I could spend some time with the new Spiritborn class already. And yeah, I have tested a lot of skills, and today I can give you kind of an overview of the best skills and also skill aspect combinations that I have figured out so far. So if you want to make your own Spiritborn builds, then there are some things that you need to keep in mind in order to get the most damage and power out of this class. So I think this video will be very helpful for you. So let's just start with an overview of the skill tree. So we have a basic skills and core skills, just like with all classes in Diablo 4. Then we have the focus skills, which are a combination of mobility but mostly utility skills, I would say. Then we also have defensive skills, also like with most classes, and potency skills. These are more like mastery classes from the sword class, so they are similar to core skills, but they don't cost vigor but have cooldowns instead. But you can also modify them to cost also vigor, which is your main resource of the Spiritborn. So yeah, and then we have ultimate skills and key passives as usual. So let's start with the focus skill. So here we have Vortex, and Vortex is a utility skill, which will go into most of my Spiritborn builds. So this is basically the only way how you can crowd control enemies. So here you just pull in all enemies around you in a very small area, so just like with the Godslayer crown, for example. So this is very helpful if you have some builds which also want to hit as many enemies as possible, which should be the case for most builds actually. So you just can increase your effective DPS of basically any build with this skill pretty much. And also it has a modifier which makes it also knock down enemies, so you just have to generate a barrier, which is not too difficult with Spiritborn, and then it will also knock down enemies, which is also very good because you have some passives and aspects which makes you deal more damage versus knock down enemies. So yeah, very good utility skill which will go in most of my Spiritborn builds. Next we have Soar. Soar in the beginning was also in most of my Spiritborn builds. So with Soar you just fly into the sky and land on the enemies. So this is a mobility skill in the first place. You can just travel far distances with it. But it's also a very powerful utility skill because Soar also makes enemies vulnerable upon landing. So here you also have a modifier that you have a cloud that remains around you for 4 seconds after landing and will also continue to make enemies vulnerable around you or inside this cloud. And so the reason why I played it in most of my builds was because Spiritborn doesn't have too many ways how you can make enemies vulnerable. But then I realized that we actually have this focal point passive here, which says that pole arms also have a 30% lucky chance to make enemies vulnerable as well. And since I have discovered that, I actually have dropped Soar just because it takes some time to land on the enemies, and for me this was not too pleasing, so I just replaced it with some other better and faster mobility skills. And yeah, for that reason, if you don't have a good way how you can make enemies vulnerable, then you should consider Soar, because this is the best way how you can make enemies vulnerable. Okay, then let's continue with Ravager. So Ravager is more like a niche skill, I would say. The cool thing about Ravager is it makes your core skills become into mobility skills as well. So with Ravager you will just dash instantly to the enemies if you use a core skill. So this is pretty cool. But also another reason why you might use Ravager is because you will have 30% increased vigor generation. So vigor is your main resource of the class, and with some builds you might have some resource problems, and 30% increased generation of your resource might be helpful. So here I'm playing with the Midnight Sun ring, which is also very powerful, unique, and I can also assume this will go in most of the Spiritborn builds, just because it solves your resource problems in a very effective way. But there are some builds that might still lack some resources, so for that reason Ravager might be very helpful. So this can just solve some problems that some builds might have, so keep in mind you have this Ravager focus skill here. And with Ravager, I also want to mention another mechanic, or actually two mechanics with Spiritborn. So first, you can see here some skills have passive and active abilities. So active abilities are, of course, the ones that happen while you activate a skill, or once you activate a skill. But also you have passive abilities. So here, for example, it says you have a minimum ferocity of 2. So ferocity is a core mechanic of the Spiritborn. So the Spiritborn has an offensive mechanic and defensive mechanic. The offensive one is ferocity, and here you will have 5% increased attack speed for each stack of ferocity. And you can have up to 4 stacks normally, but you can also increase this maximum amount of ferocity with skills, with aspects, with uniques, and with your Spiritborn Hall, or how it's called. I think it's called Spiritborn Hall, yeah. So, yeah, you have some ways to increase it further, but you just get more attack speed with more ferocity stacks. This is basically how it works. And you also have resolve stacks, and here you have 20% damage reduction as long as you have at least one resolve stack. And you lose resolve stacks if you take direct damage from enemies. So this works a little bit similar to the Dark Shroud mechanic of the Rogue class, but here you just don't scale your damage reduction with the amount of resolve stacks, but you just have to keep at least one active in order to get this 20% damage reduction bonus. So yeah, these are the two mechanics of the class. So you also need to understand that, because we are gonna discuss the next skill, which is Armored Hide. And Armored Hide is for me the best skill overall in the Spiritborn class. So Armored Hide also have a passive and an active ability. The passive ability grants you 1 resolve stack per 5 seconds. So we just explained what resolve stacks are. So you get 1 per second. This is not too crazy, but the active ability is what makes the skill so powerful. So first of all, you become unstoppable, which is kind of helpful, and you get 100% increased block chance. The way how block chance works is, so if I activate my Armored Hide here, you can see I will increase my block chance to 100%, and then I have some block damage reduction. So this goes up to 35% with Armored Hide. So I will get 35% damage reduction each time I block an attack, and with 100% block chance, I will block all of the direct attacks. So also a pretty huge damage reduction bonus in order to survive in the higher tiers of the game. So here with Reinforced Armored Hide, I get this additional 20% damage reduction for blocking. And also what's very important here is I get, with Enhanced Armored Hide, I get maximum resolve stacks at once when I activate Armored Hide. So here you can see, if I would have 0 resolve, after activating I would have 12. And I have 12 because here I'm playing with the Gorilla Spirit Hall, and this increases my resolve stacks. So you can also temper it on your gear, you can also have like maximum resolve stacks tempered, and you can even further increase resolve. And now I want to explain to you why this is so powerful. So first of all, resolve stacks also is a way how you can scale your damage in the end game. So for example, you have this Colossal Glyph in the Paragon tree, on the Paragon board, which gives you 2% increased damage for each stack of resolve you have. So here I would have 2% multiplied with 12 stacks, so 24% multiplicative damage bonus. And you can even further increase this with tempering, as I mentioned. So very powerful way how you can scale your damage. But the most broken thing about it is actually the 100% block chance. So here we have the first combination of skill and aspects, which is redirected force. So this aspect, I have it on my amulet, and it will increase my critical strike damage equal to up to 105% of my block chance. And after blocking some damage, this bonus will even get doubled for 10 seconds. So if I make this dummies attack me with physical damage, you can see, so here I have 1700% critical strike damage, but once I activate Armored Hide, this will go to 5000. So the reason for that is I increase my block chance by 100%, and also I'm blocking damage because the enemies are attacking me. So I'm doubling this damage, this bonus here, so I have 210% increased critical strike damage. So this basically triples my critical strike damage and triples my overall damage if I critical strike with every attack. And especially for the poison builds, we also have some nice synergies here, because the key passive also scales with critical strike damage. So you can see here we are jumping from around 500% to 1500%. So here I'm also tripling my key passive bonus. So the combination of Armored Hide and Redirected Force alone more than triples my total damage output of this poison build, for example. So this is a pretty crazy combination of skills and aspects, and for that reason it belongs in every Spiritborn build that uses critical strike damage as a scaling for its total damage output. And as I mentioned, you also become unstoppable, you also increase your damage reduction, and you also get maximum resolve stacks. So this skill alone is just pretty insane. Yeah, the best skill in my opinion for Spiritborn. Now, another powerful skill with defensive skills here is counterattack. So here we are only interested in reinforced counterattack, because here we just get this juicy bonus of 30% increased critical strike damage. It also increases your dodge chance passively by 10%, which is also nice, but this 30% increased critical strike damage is what I'm very interested about. And if you're also playing with Midnight Sun, which I believe, as I mentioned, will go in most builds of Spiritborn, you will also gain this counterattack's passive effect without having it on your skill bar. So usually you need to have the skill in your skill bar to get the passive effect as well. But with this ring you can just have it in your skill tree and not in your active skill bar. And you will just get another 30% critical strike damage. So this ring is very busted. It also gives you this free aspect, you could say, of 30% critical strike damage with counterattack. So I would also use it in actually all of my Spiritborn builds that utilize critical strike damage. And another very powerful defensive skill, which is not so defensive but actually offensive, is Scourge. So Scourge is a defensive skill which fears enemies around you, so it slows and fears them, so they are not attacking you anymore. And also it deals poison damage to them. Let me just get rid of this physical attacks here. And then you can see what it also does is it has some very juicy modifiers. So here, each time you deal damage with Scourge, you deal increased damage to crowd control enemies, and this goes up to 50%. So with 5 enemies around you, you just have to proc it 2 times, and you can see I'm basically instantly jumping. Okay, here I needed 3 times. I'm jumping to this 50 stacks, which gives me 50% increased damage versus crowd control enemies. So this is a huge damage multiplier in the end game. And what it also does is it gives you lifesteal. And this is a very unique affix. It used to be on the Andariel's Visage helmet, but they actually removed it. So it's very powerful, and lifesteal is just the best way how you can heal back to your maximum life. So lifesteal, pretty crazy. And so Scourge, you can see, is just a very, very powerful utility skill. And here I can show you a gameplay clip. So because the problem with Scourge obviously is that you fear enemies around you, and you actually don't want to fear them because they will start running away from you, and that's not what you want in order to speed farm. But you can just combine this very good with Vortex. So you can see here, first I use Vortex to pull in the enemies, and afterwards I use Scourge. So they will not run away from me because they are pulled in and maybe even knocked down also with Vortex. So with the combination of Vortex and Scourge, you just get all of this damage multipliers and lifesteal effects from Scourge, but their enemies won't run away from you, like you can see here, but you will just pull them in with Vortex. So this is a very nice combination of 2 skills. And also, Scourge allows you to use this apprehension aspect here. This is a utility aspect, which increases your damage up to 40%, so a pretty huge multiplier as well, to feared enemies. And yeah, you fear enemies with Scourge. So very simple way to increase your damage with some utility aspects. So yeah, in my opinion, also very powerful skill that goes in most of my builds. Now let's continue with Rushing Claw. So Rushing Claw is the best mobility skill with Spiritborn. You can see it has a very long range. So here I'm just standing here, and I just have to target an enemy, and I will instantly dash to this enemy, and you can see the range is pretty insane. So it's better than the dash from Rogue, I would say. So you have the disadvantages: you cannot dash into empty area, so I cannot just dash around, but I need to target an enemy, but the range is just insane. So for that reason I replaced Soar with Rushing Claw, just because I can dash around much quicker and just zoom through the map. So yeah, just the best mobility skill in the game, or at least for the Spiritborn class. Very good skill. And lastly, we have this ultimate skill here, which is the Hunter. And Hunter is for me by far the best ultimate skill. So Hunter grants you 4 additional ferocity stacks. So you can see here right now I have 0 ferocity stacks. And once I activate Hunter, I go up to 8 instantly. And 8 is 4 more than my maximum. So I usually have 4 maximum ferocity stacks. But because the Hunter says that it overfills you by 4, it means that it will just add 4 ferocity to the maximum amount of your ferocity stacks. So if you would have 10 maximum ferocity stacks, you will get 14. And this is pretty crazy. So you just instantly get 8 times 5% attack speed. So in this case, I would have 40% attack speed bonus after activating Hunter. And it also increases your damage that you deal to injured enemies. So enemies that have less than 35% of their life remaining, you just increase it by 100%, so you basically double your damage to injured enemies, which is also crazy damage multiplier, and will be something around 20% increased average damage, yeah, because enemies are injured very quickly. So yeah, this is a pretty cool damage increasement, and also you have a chance to reset the ultimate by itself. So killing an enemies while the Hunter is present also has a 40% chance to instantly reset its cooldown. So you don't actually have to invest anything into cooldown reduction. If you have a very solid speed farm build, you will just reset this ultimate by itself. So yeah, this is very powerful, and in my opinion by far the best ultimate skill compared to all the other ultimate skills here. So yeah, I think that's enough for the video. I have covered the best skills in my opinion, and most of them will go into most of my Spiritborn builds. So if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe to this channel to not miss any further guides and videos about that. So don't forget, I'm also still a Rogue main on this channel. I will cover a lot of Rogue builds as well, but since I had to test the Spiritborn, I also fell in love with it a bit. So Spiritborn will also be a class that I will pay some attention to in the future, and will also make some guides about it. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe to not miss out any on the future videos. And yeah, thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I guess I see you in the next one. So have a nice day, and bye bye.